Oh, I hope you enjoyed this one. What it was, I was looking at your profile yesterday,
Yeah.
and when I saw that you'd had that experience of your ghost story, I thought, oh, that might be an interesting conversation because I've got a few of them.
Yay! I love them. I love them.
Yeah, and then I also saw your notes about how you wanted to talk about.
Oh,
Oh,
Gilgamesh.
yes, Gilgamesh. So if we've got time, we can have a little discussion about that if you want. If
Yeah, well,
you
we
want
can
to.
just open it up so people can start thinking about it and then maybe have an in-depth discussion about it because I've got to look further into it and stuff as well. It's just yesterday blew my mind. Is what?
As we've said, now it's this rabbit trail is massive. It's just, as I say,
And
I
it's all
thought
connected.
I thought I had all the information I could ever want to have, and I don't think I've
Just
got
keeps
any of it.
coming. All we know
Anyway,
is that we know nothing. Hey, there's just so much.
well, if I've learned one thing at the age of 60, the more I think I know, the less I actually know.
Exactly right.
Again, the expression that I often quote is, condemnation without investigation is ignorance, and being ignorant seems to be an easier option for people, and I get that.
I do too. I do too.
I do get that. Some people just say, "Look, whoa,
Yeah, I don't want to know.
don't tell me," and then I haven't got to worry about anything.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So okay. So what we're going to do today, the theme for today, I've titled it "Spirits or Demons."
Beautiful.
Because I do think both are relevant for us today, and especially the rabbit holes and the conversations that we're going to engage in. We're certainly going to see both of those entities at their best and at their worst, because I do think both of those entities, good versus evil, are going to play a massive role in our lives, and certainly that of members who confess or profess to be believers in the Lord Jesus Christ. So very interesting. Anyway, after I watched your presentation, I thought, wow, that was incredible. And I'm sure many of our listeners will maybe have similar experiences, and perhaps won't perhaps have the explanation or understanding of what went on and when it went on and why it went on. And I'm not here to say yay or nay. It is or it isn't. We just say to people, just listen and engage in the conversation. And if you've got any similar experiences, then we'd love to hear it, love to engage with you. So what do you want to know?
Start at the very beginning.
All right, I knew you were going to say that. Right. Well, my first experience, if I've got to be careful what word I use here because it's not spiritual. I'm going to use the word demonic. My first introduction to the demonic realm was when I was 10 years of age, a junior school where, the old end of year class photograph type thing.
Yeah.
And I'm the good looking one on the middle left row in case you're looking for him.
Oh, yes, I can see him. Okay.
And that was our teacher, Mr. Sale, incredible teacher. I had a lot of respect for our teachers, and headmaster, a guy called Mr. Dunn, awesome guy. Anyway, so the story of what introduced me into the demonic realm was one of the guys in our, in fact, he's not in that picture, so he wasn't in our class, he was in the other class. He was into a Ouija board, believe it or not, at 10.
No, I had the same experience at primary
school. Oh boy. Anyway, I was naive. In fact, I think I was naive up to about 16. But anyway, he brought this Ouija board and he said, come on, let's get in the classroom. Let's, blah, blah. So we managed to persuade our teacher to let us stay in the class at dinner time. And we locked the door so that nobody disturbed us. I don't know whether you had them in your school, but the old cast iron with wooden desk with the inkwells. I was going to say, I think it might be a little bit before yours. But trust me, they were heavy. And the ones that we had were doubles. So to move one of them, it took about 5 or 6 kids. And I can remember an experience one day that we had to actually move them because they were doing some repairs. And he said, can you get all the desks kind of to the side? And they were really heavy. Anyway, we start doing this Ouija board, and this table starts to lift. And there's 4 of us sat around it. And, you know, to say I needed to have a change of underpants wasn't in it. You know what I mean? We had the keys to the door and we tried to get out and we couldn't get out. We could not unlock that door whatsoever. So what we did is, see, there's a big tall window. They were about 12 foot and they were cast iron. We had to literally get the window open, climb out the window, go round the school, tell the teacher, and he came back with us and he just put the key in the door and the door opened, and that was the end of it. We told them what went on, and we said, you know, don't ever play with that stuff again, lads. You know, that's not extracurricular activities that you want to be engaged in. To be honest with you, Kirsten, it scared, you know, to use the vernacular, it scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
And that was my introduction at 10 years of age.
Because
Crazy.
in previous conversations, you've said you didn't grow up in a religious home or anything, so
No.
you didn't have any knowledge one way or the other at that point.
And again, I don't think that was, you know, even I think, you know, from a religious practice point of view, I don't even think that stuff would have really been talked about anyway.
No, true, not at that age, no.
You know, not for kids at that age. You know, there may have been the odd topic about demons, possession, and all that sort of stuff. But anyway,
Probably not.
so yeah, so that was my introduction to the demonic world. Now, not that made me religious or anything, but it just opened up that field of information, if you like. And then lo and behold, we left school that year, because that was the 11, you know, coming up to 11. And then I went to a junior school. You can go and actually research this, because I was looking for the photograph and I couldn't believe how quick that photograph came up when I did the Google search. Because that is actually the picture of the college that was on Durning Road in Edge Hill, Liverpool, which became our school, Edge Hill Boys School. And what happened, it took a direct hit during the Blitz, because obviously Liverpool being a seaport, you know, the German Luftwaffe and whatever you wanted to try and destroy the port, because we were shipping out all kinds. We were making parachutes, we were making, you know, military equipment, etc., because we were a big industrial town at that point. So they obviously thought, well, if we can stop the supply chain, blah, 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 we'll win the war, if you like. But anyway, this site took a direct hit. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, when this was bombed out, the story behind it was so devastatingly hit that they thought, you know, wow, there's no point even attempting to try and rebuild this type of story. But the thing was, it had been converted into an air raid shelter. So whenever the sirens went off, or the call to get out the way, get to a place of safety, well, this site was a place of safety because it had an air raid shelter underneath there. Now, the official story is that there were some 160 people reported to have been in that air raid shelter. Now, because of the devastation, they gave no possibility of any survivors being in there. So much so that they just threw tons and tons of lime over the site. Rather than try and dig out body parts, which would have been horrendous, they just threw lime over the bodies to decay the bodies so that, you know, there wouldn't be the stench and the bodies would just rot. Well, you could hear the screams. They had actually survived. And the screams apparently were merciful. And they couldn't do nothing because, you know, I'm sure you'll know, once lime comes into contact with water, it's just acid. It just becomes acid. So not only had those people experienced the raid, they were now being subjected to lime attacking their body, which would have just rotted it and killed them.
Oh my gosh.
So where does that relate to my story? Well, my introduction to spirits, we were, as I say, my responsibility along with another friend, we had a biology lab that had some small animals, you know, gerbils and hamsters and all that sort of stuff. And we had the assignment of going into school a little bit earlier than most kids, so that we could go in and feed the animals and clean the cages, etc. And we'd done this. I mean, we'd done this on and off for a while, so this wasn't our first time. Anyway, again, we were in there. We had the keys. We didn't lock the door in this case, but we were in there. We were feeding the animals. And the next minute, do you remember the big, tall? Again, you're too young. You might not remember this. But the old chalkboards that used to be quite tall and they revolved.
I do remember those, yes. Yep.
Right, okay. Well, our school had all of them in, and that lit up. It absolutely lit up like a light had come onto it. And we could see loads and loads of faces, and they were screaming.
Both of you saw it at the same time?
Yes, yes. Now again, just as well, we had a lot of underpants. Because it was almost the same experience with the Ouija board, because I had no concept of what was going on. It just looked, whoa, what's going on? Anyway, we tried to get out and we couldn't get out. The door was locked. And I thought, oh, no, not again. I've been here before. Anyway, luckily enough, there was an adjoining classroom that door was open. So we ran into that, ran out the door, came down the corridor, ran to the caretaker and said, oh, we've just had this experience. Anyway, the headmaster was one for getting in quite early. So the caretaker took us up to the headmaster. And the caretaker said, you better listen to this. And we told the headmaster the story, and he said, well, let me tell you, boys, this is what happened.
And then he told you what had happened.
And he told us the story that the school was built on that bombed out college. And so, I mean, I've got all goosebumps now. So that was my first experience of seeing something that was way beyond my understanding. And to this day, right now in front of you, I still swear by witness on a stack of Bibles that we saw that and that was real. And then when he told us the story, then, that just made sense. Again, similar experience during the war in Liverpool. There was a church that had took a direct hit and was bombed out. And it's still there today. They never rebuilt it. They just left it as is, and you can see the story. But anyway, I apologize to all listeners because I can't remember whether this was the actual church, but the story that I heard was that a church did take a hit, and this is the only one that I can find, so I'm assuming this is it, but I do apologize, it might not be.
Yeah.
But the story we heard was, again, when the siren sounded, this church was deemed a place of safety. So many people would run out of their houses, whatever. This is in the city centre, and it's still there today. It's a tourist site now. The people went into the church, praying and whatever. Anyway, there was the story that we got told was that there was a marble statue. Now, if you've ever seen the film Angels and Demons by Tom Hanks, the one where they're following the trail of the angels that are pointing and they're doing all, they're doing all this that way. Yeah. Well, apparently this angel had an outstretched arm with a finger pointing, and apparently the story goes that this marble statue actually started to turn, pointed to the door, and the minister took that as a sign, we need to get out of here. And anyway, the story went that they all left the building, and sometime thereafter they took a direct hit.
Wow.
And again, one of those stories. Now, those articles, because as I say, when I was searching for the picture today, I actually saw all the news articles, and you can go and search it. Again, that was one of those, demons or angels, and I consider that one of the angel ones where, there was a definite warning to the people to get out the way because something's about to happen. And off they went. You can't write this stuff, can you?
And I believe things like that happen every day to all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I never challenge this stuff. I've never had those kind of experiences, but, I know thousands of other people have, and I'm sharing those stories that I've had that I know to be true. Now, again, can't really produce this stuff because this is one of those ones you just go, whoa.
Yeah.
And this concerns our daughter. Now, when my wife and I got together, she became pregnant not long thereafter. Her dad died during her pregnancy. Her dad's name was Lawrence. Her mum's name was Flo. Anyway, 2 or 3 years after our daughter's birth, they would often go to the cemetery to take flowers, etc., because that's the way Flo dealt with it. And she took our Laura with her. Now, Laura would be about 3. I don't think she was any older than that. I'm going with 3. She said to her Nan, there's somebody watching us over there by that tree. And we're sort of, looking at them. And every time Flo turned around to see, she couldn't see anything. And then when Laura looked back around, she could see a figure of a man. And what I tend to omit on this story is he was smiling at her. You know, this gentleman or man, whatever, whatever,
Scared of him.
was smiling at her. Now she didn't know who that was, because in my mother-in-law's house, they didn't have pictures. I mean, if you look at my house, and one day I'll give you the tour of my living room, I got pictures everywhere, as you can see.
Yeah.
Now that generation didn't do that. They treasured their photographs so much that they put them in albums. They didn't want them getting damaged and, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, my daughter wasn't one for looking through books and that sort of stuff. But on this occasion, she was looking through a photograph album. And she said, Nan, that's that man that's watching us when we go, now, you can't tell a 3 or 4 year old to do that.
No. And that is a common thing. Kids see that through the veil.
Absolutely. And as I say, and she hadn't seen this photograph because she was only 3 or 4, and you don't really talk to kids about photographs, you know what I mean? But anyway, so again, one of those stories, you can't make that stuff up.
Yeah.
So that was the experience of what I believe is somebody who's really close to you and is trying to let you know that they're there and they're watching over us. And we as members of the church, we recognise that we have guardian angels and those sorts of
experiences who have passed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I relate to that. Now, as we grew, as the kids obviously started growing up, blah, 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 the next slide, which I had to be a little bit sensitive with this because I tried to make this look quite sweet and innocent, whereas it was almost a changing pair of underpants experience again.
Yeah.
Because as we first joined the church, didn't have a lot of experience with the priesthood, and other than blessing, my own family when they were ill, didn't really engage in other priesthood blessings. But on this particular occasion, we had a member of the church who was one of our neighbours, and she was telling us that she had 2 children. She had a young girl who was about 8, and she had a young boy named Paul, funnily enough, who was, again, 2, maybe 3 at the most. And he kept saying, somebody keeps coming into my room at night, to the point that he became quite traumatic about it and wouldn't go into the room, wanted to sleep with his mum all the time. She was telling me this story, and she said, would you do me a favour? Would you come and bless the house? Because, I am actually getting a little bit worried. A little bit like your story, this one. This is what triggered that memory of. Didn't know too much about it, so I got the priesthood manual out and looked up, dedicating the home, and I thought, yeah, I can do that. That seems reasonably fair enough. Yeah. So I went down. She only lived about 8 houses away from me. So we went down, and she said, but look, before you do this, she said, will you just come and experience this? Because, tell me what this is, because I have no experience of this. I don't know what this is. She said, there's a cold spot upstairs. Wow. Now, I don't know whether you've ever come across that.
I watch all the ghost hunter things, paranormal things, because that's something that I'm fascinated by. I have been since I was a little kid, and I know about the cold spots,
Well, you'll love this then. So anyway, she said, so she took me upstairs, and as you turn on the banister, the first room on the left was this young boy Paul's bedroom. And then as you walk back towards the front of the house is the main bedroom, and as you got halfway along the landing, you hit this cold spot. Now, I'm telling you, it was like walking into a freezer. Now, I don't suffer from the cold, but even I was, I could feel, that's how cold it was. It even sent a shiver down my spine. And even to this day, I can feel that same experience now. And I went, wow, what's this? I said, I've never experienced this before. And it was a definite cold spot. Now, she said, and I won't mention the name because this lady is still alive as far as I know, but she said this appeared around about the same time as, her son saying about this person coming into the room. So I said, okay, well, I'm glad you shared that, because now you just completely scared the crap out of me to say again. So anyway, I offered a dedicatory prayer, I blessed the home. Anyway, it disappeared. And the young boy, I said, that it'd be a place of safety, and if there's anything evil present, that it be removed in the name of Jesus Christ, type of thing. And the cold spot went.
Yep.
And the young boy never ever complained again about someone coming
The
into his
power.
room. And
Priestess.
I thought, wow. So take it for what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I believe that
We've
that
had
was
lots of experiences like that in our family. My elder sister, she was well older than me growing up. And yeah, she called my dad in to get the house blessed that she was in.
yeah. Now, I'll be honest with you. I mean, you seem to have a fascination for it. I mean, it really did scare me. I mean, I'm a big guy. I mean, I don't scare easy. I mean, I'll fight an army if it comes to the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that stuff, it kind of did scare me. And you know, I remember as a teenager going to what? Do you remember The Exorcist when that first came out?
Yep.
I mean, I went to see that the first time it came out.
Yeah.
Now again, you know, I'm sorry I went to see it because it caused me nightmares for weeks. Because
And
I
it was
just
that, and it was the other one called The Omen. Do you remember
yes,
that
The
one?
Omen was the
Damien?
same.
Yeah.
So I really would get goosebumps whenever I watched that stuff. So I kind of, without knowing I knew it was real, I kind of knew it was real, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So I realized from my experiences as being younger, you know, you don't dabble with this stuff. You know what I mean? You got to avoid this like the plague. And I did, you know, and in many occasions I'd try and watch these movies knowing I shouldn't be watching this stuff, you know what I mean, because they don't like it.
See,
And
I watched them. We used to have, like I spoke about the Sunday night horrors. I was fascinated and would stay
yeah,
up and watch this
yeah,
stuff. And like even as an adult, if I couldn't sleep, I'd turn on something in the middle of the night. I could be at home by myself. And I think what it came down to for me in my later, you know, as I got older, is the same philosophy that I have learning about Lucifer and his plan. And it's
yeah,
like, you've got to know your enemy. It
yeah,
takes the fear out of it because ultimately we have the power to overcome that.
yes.
If you know what I
And I
mean.
think, yeah, no, I totally agree with you, because I think up until the time when I went through the temple, and you know, we get to that point in in the endowment session where we hear those
Well, we
kind of
know that we
explanations.
have power over him. Like,
Yeah, and I would say up until that. Now I didn't go through the temple till I was what 25. So I would say up until that point, that stuff really did, you know,
yeah, yeah,
it scared me. But after the temple, I thought, no, I know, I understand it now.
yes,
Whereas I
yes,
didn't understand it then, because it was only a year before I went to the temple that I was even introduced to the church.
yes, yeah.
So I wasn't religious. So therefore, I didn't really have a grasp on any of this stuff. So, you know, I didn't understand it. But obviously,
One of my favorite things that keeps coming to my head is the only power the devil has over you is the power you yourself give to him.
allow it, absolutely,
Yeah,
and
it sticks with me all the time.
and that's probably why I've embarked on this quest now to seek the truth, because you know, again, we don't talk about this stuff in church,
No.
but we know it's real.
Yeah,
You know, Joseph Smith's vision. You
yeah,
know, you know,
yeah,
a dark force overtook him
yeah.
to the point
Before he had the first
yeah,
vision, he was overtaken by an evil that he thought was going to destroy him.
yeah. So I think, looking back now in hindsight, I believe I was being prepared for the last days, but just didn't understand it.
Yep.
Because now, you know, bring it on. You know,
Yes.
I'll take it on, because I now know who you are, where you are, and as you said,
And how you work.
I know how you work, and I know the enemy.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, I've again, I keep a good stock of underwear.
Yeah. You see that.
So anyway, so that kind of brings us to the more spiritual side of this. Again, this is not my experience, but this is what happened to my wife. When the Preston Temple was concluded and was being ready for dedication, I had the assignment, or my wife and I both offered our service during the dedicatory sessions of the temple. I was given responsibility to be responsible for security along with some other guys. And in fact, I was bodyguard to President Hinckley while he was at. I had that responsibility, and my wife was given the responsibility of being an usher. Now,
nice.
during the morning, they would have you know, the usual thing. You know, everything starts off with a prayer. So all the ushers were gathered together in the stake centre on the site, and the person who was responsible for the ushers, he said to the group, "Don't be surprised if you see angels today."
Yep.
Now, my wife has never had any experience of angels, although she was and is quite a spiritual person. But she took that quite serious. You know, she believed that before anything ever happened. So anyway, she was assigned one of the rooms down in the baptistry area of the Preston Temple.
I love the baptistry. It's one of my favourites.
Yeah, it's one of my special places. Yeah. And one of the off rooms could seat about 30 people.
Yep.
And she had the responsibility of that room to make sure everything was, you know, telework and people in comfortable. Anyway, when the dedicatory prayer started, now my wife didn't tell me this till some hours later. She said as soon as the dedicatory prayer started, she said right around the perimeter of the room, there were people dressed in white.
Oh.
Yeah. Now she said, I think they were angels. I said, well, you know what? I don't think they were angels. I think that they were the spirits of those people whose perhaps names had been presented to the temple, and they were awaiting their work. And even now, you know, so
goosies, eh? I got it all over my face. And that's how the Spirit testifies to me. It's taken me a lot of years to work out how the Spirit testifies of truth, and now I know how.
So that was her experience of that, and I thought, wow, you know, I'd love something like that to happen to me.
You know, I'll give you an example of something that happened. Like I didn't see, I felt, but I didn't see. But in our baptistry in the New Zealand temple, I organised like a family, I think it was this time, a family session where I had about 200 names, got some people from the ward. Oh, it was my twins, Lily and Xanthi. It was their 12th birthday and they wanted to go to the temple to do baptism. So we organised like a family group, people in our ward, and we went down for this baptistry session. One of the gentlemen that came down with me, he was the baptizer. He was, you know, putting people in the water. And I was standing up the end of where they walk out to go up to the changing room with the mop, and I was mopping up after the kids that come out. There was this whole massive family that I'd found over in the UK, at the Brooks. They were massive family, and we were doing all them, and I could feel people around me, and I just thought, I'll keep that to myself, you know. Yeah. I could feel people, and then after it, the baptizer said, I could see people all around you. And he said, I know that they were the Brooks family. And before he even said that, I knew they were there because I could feel them. I can't see them, but I could feel them. And he was somebody that was blessed enough to see.
Well, that segues right nicely into the second experience that I want to share, again, relating to the temple. Now, again, I apologize because I can't actually remember which temple this work was done, whether it was in the London temple where we were actually sealed and we received our endowment, or whether it was in the Preston temple, which was, you know, a number of years later. I can't remember now, getting too old, memories going. But anyway, we come to the point where we were going to do the work for Pat's sister. Now, Pat's sister had died while Pat was in her early 20s, so Kay would be about 27, 20, she was about 5, 6 years older. She'd gone in for some dental treatment that actually went wrong, and the gas in the air was over mixed, and she ended up, anyway, cut long story short, she passed away. So that was quite tragic on its own. And anyway, we got to the point where she was going to do work for us. So we'd gone up, we'd done the initiatory work, we were now going through the endowment session, and we sat down. The endowment session is just about to start. Pat sits down, and our friend who kind of was always with us, so she was with Pat, supporting Pat, and you know, we went into the session. I was in the same session. Anyway, the female officiator walks over to Pat. She says to our friend's name was Christine, who was sat next to her, would you do me a favor? Could you please come out of that chair and move towards the back, because somebody who's here wants to sit there.
Oh, wow.
I love it. Now, Pat didn't see her, didn't see Kay, I didn't see her, Christine didn't see her, but this officiator, a little bit like that story you just said about
Yeah.
doing that work, she
Some
did
people
see
can
her.
see. Yeah.
She said, "Could you please vacate the chair? Somebody wants to sit round," pointing to my wife, to this lady. Now,
Yeah.
she didn't know who that was, blah, blah, blah. Didn't know my wife. So that's another one of those
Beautiful.
wonderful blessings that
And
you
you
just...
think about it, Paul. You think about it. If you've passed over to the other side and you're watching somebody sort of preparing or finding your name and then preparing your temple card, and you're watching them go to the temple, get on their white gear and go. Imagine the excitement of the people. That's me. That's my name.
That's my name.
Of course they're going to be there. Of course.
And again, that was just one of those experiences. You can't write that stuff.
Yep.
Now, the other one is one of the weirdest experiences. And again, my wife, spiritual person she was. Do you remember when the church were given the assignment of doing the census? I don't know whether you were on that. I think I can't remember whether it was around about 1990, 91. Anyway, the church was given the assignment.
I wasn't active then. I was off doing my own thing.
All right, no problem. You were off partying.
Yeah.
Anyway, the church received an assignment to help with the genealogy side of completing censuses. And my wife, being a qualified typist, she volunteered to do it. So what she did, a couple of times a week, she would go up to the chapel. They had a computer set up, and she would type in the name. You just took the names off the census, put them into a record, blah blah blah. Anyway, she told me the story again. She was typing this person's name, and I'm going to use your name just for the sake of making it easy. And as she typed Kirsten MacDonald, the census would give a description of the child, the age of the child, blah, 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 gender, all that. And then it would give a description of the child. Now, this child's description was imbecile. So imbecile was, I mean, we'd probably call it learning disabilities today, yeah? But obviously this was going back some time. And her definition was imbecile. And she said, as I typed the name in, and then I typed in imbecile, she heard the voice say, "No, I'm not." And she would look. Now, she was in what was our ward library, and it's only about 10 foot by 12 foot, very, very small room. And she was by the door, and she got up and she went outside. She thought somebody was messing with her, a young kid. And she said, "What?" And then she went back to the record, and she typed it in again. Kirsten MacDonald, imbecile. "No, I'm not." And she said that words where I knew that person was watching me record that.
Yeah.
And she knew that she was no longer that, obviously her spirit's now gone on, and she wasn't an imbecile. But again, to have that kind of experience, you think,
I'm just sitting here thinking back, because I forget about things. I've had so many experiences. So now where I'm at in my faith and my beliefs, there's no doubt for me that there's both sides in spirit form, So heaps of experiences, and I'm sure plenty of people have. And if there's anyone out there that's got some, man, tell us about it.
And I'd love to, I'd love for that conversation to be taken up, because for me, these are all faith promoting experiences, good or bad. Whether you see the dark side as Darth Vader would say, or whether you see the light as Luke Skywalker said, this is real. This is a real war that we're facing. And
something that's interesting is that my son Zach, that I have my chats with on a Friday night, he left the church young, teenager. And he went down the science route. So everything, unless it's proved by science, it doesn't exist. He's very much matter of fact, thinks it's all about what you can prove. And so for years, I couldn't even have any kind of discussion like this. No. But he said now that he's been going down this road for a while, and he can see the pure evil that's in the world, now he understands through science that there's opposition for everything. So
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
this terrible evil which he can see and he knows is there. Now he knows that there has to be good. Just as powerful. So he's actually finding God because
through science.
Darkness. And I think lots of people are with this awakening.
And I think that, well, I was just going to say that the whole thing about this consciousness awakening is that, to me, I can see science in everything God's done.
Well, to me, God's the scientist. He's the master scientist.
Yeah, well, he's the master architect. You know, you look at the, the Fibonacci numbers, the sequence of the numbers. Well, Fibonacci numbers is like, 1 and 1 equals 2, 2 and 1 equals 3, 3 and 2 and 3 equals 5, 3 and 5 equals 8. There's a mathematical sequence that plays out right throughout. You know, when you see all these like spirals, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. Well, that's the Fibonacci numbers. Now that's in creation. That's in, flowers. If you look at certain flowers, you can see that Fibonacci sequence. You can see that number play out. Grand architecture, the pyramid, the size of the pyramid, the dimensions of the pyramid. It's all. Your son would call that science. It's all architectural information. But it plays into a biblical sequence. And, it's just like God saying, look, I created this stuff. I know how this all works. You know what I mean?
Exactly right. Exactly.
You're discovering what I've told you all along I've done anyway.
Yes.
So for me, science only confirms that God exists.
Same.
Because some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about when we start getting into the the transhuman side of things and what the agenda of that is and how science is working, they all delve into this sequencing, genome sequencing, mapping out the human body, mapping out the human brain. I mean, come on, how are they managing to do that? Well, they're managing to do that because the angels who came onto the earth, the Watchers who started the giant problem off, they had all the knowledge because that was their assignment. Go and teach the people how to do everything. You know what I mean? So, the scripture and the information, there's nothing new under the sun. There's no, I'm a great follower of Tesla's work. And, Tesla said, I didn't come across, I didn't discover it. Sorry, I didn't make this stuff. I discovered it. It was like light bulb moments. Einstein the same, mathematicians the same, scientists the same.
Heavenly Father gave them the knowledge
when it was needed to counteract the role that the devil's playing, and the devil knows this stuff, so he knows he's using it. And this whole paranoia, superstition stuff and witchcraft, however far you want to go down that rabbit hole. It all plays out in where we are today. Yep. Now, when we go back towards, what was going on historically, and you mentioned wanting to talk a little bit more about Gilgamesh, okay? When we go back in history at that pivotal moment, and I'll use President Nelson's vernacular, when Nimrod started to have Israel, man, he became the King of Kings and is known as the Lord of Lords. He became the first Antichrist, and we're talking about spirits or demons type of story scenario. Carrying on from that, he became the first person who set out to try and dethrone God and built the Tower of Babel, etc., etc. Now, what a lot of members I wouldn't say don't know, but perhaps haven't looked at, is the fact it doesn't matter what we're seeing in the world, God's in control.
Yes.
Okay? Now, it's whether he's doing it for his purpose or he's saying, well, okay.
I'll let it play out. Yeah.
I'll play this game of chess with you. When it comes to the Tower of Babel, he divides the people into 70 nations effectively, yeah?
Yeah.
So what does God say to Nimrod, or in this case, the devil? I'll tell you what, I'll have this game with you. I'll give you 69 pieces and I'll keep one. I just want the house of Israel. I just want the Jews. Okay, you can have all the rest. Do your best. Yeah.
Yep.
So the whole narrative from Nimrod is the Tower of Babel is obviously demolished and everyone's scattered over the world. So what you have, Nimrod, known in the Iraq-Iran area of the time, Babylon, if you like, his name was Nimrod. But when the people were scattered by tongues and nations,
That's where all the other names came.
They were all talking about Nimrod, but they were talking in the language of their language, which was, if you were Greek, he was Apollo. If you were Syrian, you were Gilgamesh. If you were Iraqi, you were, Iranian, Iraq, you were Nimrod. And then if you were somewhere else, you had this other name. So when you look at all these cultures, they're all talking about the same person who happens to be Nimrod.
Yeah.
But in this case, the name that you're referring to, Gilgamesh,
is in Iraq.
That's Nimrod.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
Now in Egypt, it's Osiris.
Yep.
And what's the whole Osiris story? It's all about resurrection.
Yeah.
It's all about bringing back the dead. It's all about preserving the body. It's all about, take what you can with you because you're going to get resurrected. You'll have it all back. So the Egyptians learned the art of preserving the body. Well,
so they've preserved Nimrod's body.
Yes, but in this case, it's actually Gilgamesh, which is Nimrod.
Yes.
So when they came across the two tombs, again, I'll probably mix up the dates here, but I think. In 1999, they came across Osiris tomb, which was between the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids. They found what they thought was a water well. Mm-hmm. And when they pumped it out, it went down into a chamber, a horizontal chamber. Mm-hmm. And then when they pumped the water out of that, it went down another chamber. And then when they pumped out another one, it went into another chamber, which had a pillar and a sarcophagus in it. Now, that is supposedly, and again, you can just Google this stuff, the Osiris tomb. Now, apparently there was a body in it, but apparently it wasn't Osiris's body. It was as if somebody got in there thinking they could resurrect themselves and blah, blah, blah. But the interesting story, which you relate to what went on with when they invaded Iraq, was that's where they found the tomb of Gilgamesh.
In Iraq, yes, yeah.
In Iraq. Now, that was in 2003, I think it was. Yeah. Or 2002, and then they invaded in 2003, whichever the date is.
Yeah.
Now, what was interesting with that story is apparently when they found that tomb, they found the body, and it was a giant. It wasn't just a small, an average 6-foot person. Apparently, this body was substantially large. I think they were saying over 10 foot. Now, the description of Nimrod is he was a normal sized person at the time when he was alive.
Right.
But he does something that corrupts the DNA. Now, it doesn't explain what it is, and although I keep researching, I kind of haven't found the answer yet. But I'm sure it's to do with gene manipulation. Everything's gene manipulation. But he starts to become a giant. Now, that's Gilgamesh. Now, they found his tomb. Now, when they invaded Iraq because of the weapons of mass destruction, no, it wasn't. This was a Luciferian plan. Because they knew if they could find the body of Gilgamesh, abstract his DNA, clone his body. Remember we were talking about cloning the body? Well, I think that's exactly what they've done. Now, that was 17 years ago.
Yeah.
So could they, perhaps possibly have cloned Gilgamesh's body? And is he alive today?
I'm all in on that. The more I learn about that, when you first brought it up, because my mind's been so shut for so long.
Yeah.
Like I said, after our very first conversation we had, I couldn't sleep that night because all these things were going around in my head. And I didn't know where to put them or where to go with them.
No.
But
And-
as I've
and-
broken it down and looked at each little thing on its own,
Well, that's why I said I think we need to break these down very, very
Yes.
small bites.
this has been
So
awesome.
it is about holding your chin up, keep going,
Yep.
keep hearing the words, keep listening, throw out what you don't accept,
Yep.
let it go, don't let it torment you.
Said I promise I won't ring you at 1:30 in the morning again. All right, my friend, I'm
Yeah.
going to have to go and take
Well,
advantage of the
take care.
sunshine.
Love you all, take care.
Love you too.
Bye.
Thank you. And yeah, find our next exciting episode. Okay.
Yeah.
See ya. Bye.